Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into one of history's most fascinating and chilling mysteries, the legendary curse of King Tutankhamun. Is it real, or just a really good story?
So this all starts with this terrifying warning. The story goes it was found right at the entrance to the 3,000-year-old tomb. And let me tell you, this one sentence, it lit a fuse that sparked decades of fear and speculation. And you know what? It didn't take long for that warning to feel terrifyingly real. Almost right away, people connected to the discovery started dying. A strange and pretty spooky pattern started to emerge. It wasn't just one or two suspicious deaths. In the end, the newspapers linked a staggering 22 deaths, either directly or indirectly, to this one archaeological dig. The media had its story, and the whole world was completely hooked. Okay, so you've got all these deaths, but the real heart of the legend, the story that everyone remembers, it all boils down to one man, the expedition's wealthy sponsor, Lord Carnarvon. His death became the absolute cornerstone of this entire myth. Now, it wasn't just that he died. It was the how. It was this whole series of eerie, hard-to-explain coincidences that turned his personal tragedy into something else entirely. I mean, think about this chain of events. A simple mosquito bite gets infected. Then, at the very moment he passes away, the entire city of Cairo plunges into darkness. And get this, his dog, Susie, all the way back in England, supposedly howls and drops dead at the exact same time. It was just perfect fuel for a media firestorm. So how did we even get here? Let's back up just a little, a few months before all the tragedy and talk of curses, to the incredible moment of discovery itself. It all kicks off with this really unlikely pair. You've got Howard Carter, this determined, mostly self-taught archaeologist, and then you have his backer, Lord Carnarvon, a rich aristocrat who had been funding Carter's search for 15 years with zero results. Carnarvon was literally about to pull the plug. This was their last shot. And then, on November 26, 1922, they found it. A sealed doorway. Carter makes his tiny little hole, holds up a candle, and peeks in. His response to Carnarvon's anxious question, well, it became one of the most famous lines in history. And what they saw, my gosh, it wasn't just a tomb. It was a perfectly preserved time capsule. We're talking more than 5,000 priceless objects. A solid gold death mask that weighed 10 kilograms. A dagger literally made from the iron of a meteorite? I mean, come on. It was, without a doubt, the greatest archaeological find ever. The entire world was just mesmerized. But as the story of a curse started to grow, one particular piece of evidence surfaced that seemed to connect the Pharaoh and his first victim in a truly chilling way. This, right here, was the supposed smoking gun. When they examined King Tut's mummy, they found a mark on his left cheek, in the exact same spot as Lord Carnarvon's infected mosquito bite. You can just imagine the headlines. For many, this was the ultimate proof, a pharaoh's revenge stretching across 3,000 years. But hang on a second, before we get too carried away, we have to ask a really basic question. What if the whole thing, the very foundation of this story, the written curse, what if it was just made up? And that's the absolute shocker here. There was no tablet, no inscription with those words was ever officially found, photographed, or cataloged. The world's most famous curse was born from a reporter's imagination, apparently after the archaeology team just kind of smirked at him when he asked if they were worried about a curse. Okay, so now that the whole written curse thing is pretty much out the window, let's bring in some science and take a look at those other spooky claims. So when you start to apply a little bit of logic, the supernatural stuff begins to fade away. Those sealed tombs, yeah, they can be full of nasty, toxic molds that could make someone sick. That citywide blackout? In 1920s Cairo, that was pretty normal. And poor Lord Carnarvon, he was already in bad health. In an age before antibiotics, a simple bug bite getting infected could absolutely be fatal. And you know, the numbers just don't lie. A study in the British Medical Journal back in 2002 looked at the data and found zero evidence of a curse. In fact, the people who actually entered the tomb lived to an average age of 70. That's well beyond the life expectancy for that time. But you know, the single biggest, most glaring piece of evidence against the curse, is the fate of the one guy who should have been its #1 target. Seriously, just think about it for a second. Who disturbed the pharaoh's peace more than anyone else? Who was the most exposed to any kind of supernatural danger or even just that toxic mold? Of course, it was Howard Carter. He was the first one to breathe that ancient air. He's the guy who physically broke the 3,000-year-old seals. He opened the coffins, and he personally handled the mummy itself. So, how long did it take for this vengeful pharaoh to finally get his man? 16 years. That's right, Howard Carter lived for 16 more years after opening that tomb, and he eventually died of natural causes at the age of 64. His very survival was a constant walking, talking rebuttal to this whole myth. For years, whenever reporters would ask him about the curse, his answer was simple, and you have to admit, pretty effective. And here's the final, beautiful irony in all of this. See, King Tut, he was basically a nobody, a minor pharaoh who was so insignificant that his successors literally tried to erase him from the history books. And that's the only reason his tomb survived untouched. No one even knew it was there. The ancient Egyptians had this belief that to speak a person's name is to make them live forever. So you have to ask yourself, was the real curse actually this massive media frenzy? Because ironically, this sensational myth is the very thing that took a forgotten boy king and made him the most famous pharaoh in history, ensuring his name would never, ever be forgotten again.